Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Prayers have resumed in Turkey's iconic Hagia Sophia after a period of 86 years. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan attended the restoration ceremony and prayers. Earlier this month, Ankara turned back the former Byzantine-era cathedral into a mosque to signify and celebrate its Ottoman roots. China says the recent escalation of tensions in Sino-US relations are entirely caused by Washington. Speaking in a video conference, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Beijing still hopes to achieve a win-win cooperation with the US. Meanwhile, the White House has warned China against tit-for-tat retaliation by ordering the US to close its consulate in Chengdu City. The order comes days after the United States asked China to close its consulate general in Houston. Iran has accused the US of risking a disaster after an American warplane's flyby of an Iranian civilian airliner led it to change altitude. In a tweet, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said the US harassed a scheduled civil airliner and endangered innocent passengers. State media reported several passengers were injured in the flight maneuver, but the US military said the jet was at a safe distance. India has reported 740 new deaths and over 49,000 fresh cases, marking the country's biggest daily surge in infections. Iran has recorded 215 deaths in a day, bringing the nationwide toll to nearly 15,300. In Pakistan, the virus has claimed 5,763 lives among over 270,000 cases of infection. Globally, the death toll from the virus has exceeded 633,000, while the number of cases are over 15.5 million. In football, holders Juventus have lost by 2-1 to Udinese at the Friuli Stadium as they missed a chance to clinch a 9th straight Italian league title. The Old Lady have won only one of their past 5 games, but just need one win from their 3 remaining games to secure the title. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In Turkey, Istanbul's iconic Hagia Sophia hosted Islamic prayer services for the first time in 86 years. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, along with other top officials, attended the prayers at the mosque. More in this report. Hagia Sophia was built as an Orthodox Christian cathedral and first converted into a mosque after the Ottoman conquest 9 centuries later. It became a museum in 1934 under the rule of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. But last month, Turkey's top court ruled the 1934 cabinet decision of converting Hagia Sophia into a museum was illegal. Subsequently, the landmark was reconverted into a mosque. An imam began the formal prayer service after Erdogan recited verses from the Holy Quran. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Leaders and dignitaries from other countries such as Azerbaijan and Qatar attended the opening ceremony. A limited number of worshippers were allowed into the building to ensure social distancing amid the COVID-19 outbreak. Millions of Muslims around the world watched the ceremony's live telecast as they were excited to see the iconic mosque hosting prayers once again. China says the recent escalation of tensions in Sino-US relations were entirely caused by Washington. Speaking at an event via video link, Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Beijing still hoped to achieve win-win cooperation with the US. This comes after Beijing ordered Washington to close its consulate in Chengdu City. China's foreign ministry said the move is a countermeasure to the US demand to close Beijing's consulate general in Houston. The White House has warned Beijing against tit-for-tat retaliation. The ties between the two countries have worsened this year over a range of issues, including the coronavirus, South China Sea, Hong Kong, and trade. Beijing has slammed U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's remarks calling for the formation of a global anti-China alliance. In a media briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said Pompeo's comments show a disregard for reality and reeks of ideological bias. Wang said China has urged the U.S. to discard the Cold War mentality. This comes after Pompeo urged the creation of a new alliance of democracies to counter what he called China's aggressive policies. Speaking in California, Pompeo said the U.S. and allies should use more creative and assertive ways to press China to change its methods. He said the combined economic, military and diplomatic power of the UN, NATO, the G7 and the G20 is enough to counter Beijing's threat. In Brazil, 1,311 more people have died from COVID-19, increasing the tally to over 84,000. The U.S. has reported 1,225 deaths and over 76,000 cases in the last 24 hours. The total number of infections in the country has surpassed 4 million, with over 144,000 deaths. Worldwide, the death count has exceeded 632,000, while cases top 15.4 million. The virus is making a dangerously aggressive comeback in Iran, where 2,621 people tested positive overnight. The death toll in the country has crossed 15,000. In Australia, state of Victoria, the outbreak is not abating as it reported another record high of new daily cases and 5 deaths. The surge in infections in South Africa has forced the government to shut schools for 4 weeks. Meanwhile, Uganda has recorded its first death from the novel coronavirus. In Asia, China reported 21 new coronavirus cases on the mainland, with most being locally transmitted. Cluster infections continue to worry South Korea as more than 50 cases emerged in the past 24 hours. India has reported a record spike in COVID-19 cases, with 49,310 people testing positive in the past 24 hours. The Health Ministry said the countrywide death toll has risen by 740 to over 30,000. The ministry said the number of total infections is nearing 1.3 million, while active cases are over 440,000. It said over 817,000 people have recovered so far. Indian Council of Medical Research says it has so far conducted 15.4 million tests in the country of over 1 billion people. Pakistan has reported 54 deaths from the coronavirus in the past 24 hours, raising the total to 5,763. The Health Ministry says 1,209 new cases were reported overnight as the tally crossed 270,000. Officials said over 219,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. The ministry said there are now over 50,000 active cases in the country. Sindh is the worst hit province with over 115,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 91,000 cases. In the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the tally of infected is nearly 33,000, while there are over 11,000 cases in Balochistan. Capital city Islamabad has reported close to 15,000 cases, while Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan have around 3,900 cases. Iran has recorded 215 more fatalities from COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, bringing the nationwide death toll to nearly 15,300. The Health Ministry said over 2,400 people have been tested positive for the virus, raising the total to over 286,000. A spokeswoman said the ministry said over 249,000 people have recovered so far. The recent surge in daily fatalities has sent shockwaves across the country. The government has made it mandatory to wear masks in public places to contain the recent surge in infections. Iran has accused the US of risking a disaster after the American warplane's flyby of an Iranian civilian airliner led it to change altitude. In a tweet, Foreign Minister Javad Zarif said the US harassed a scheduled civil airliner and endangered innocent passengers. State media reported several passengers were injured in the flight maneuver, but the US military said the jet was at a safe distance. The plane belonging to Mahan Air was heading from Tehran to Beirut at the time. Earlier, Iran's foreign ministry said it will take political and legal measures after an investigation into the incident. Minister of Urban Development Mohammed said Tehran has lodged a complaint with the International Civil Aviation Organization. Ukraine's Deputy Foreign Minister Yevgeny Yanin says illegal interference led to the Ukrainian Airlines plane crash in Iran. Earlier, Canada shared black box transcripts of the plane shot down by Tehran on January 8. Yanin thanked all the partners in deciphering the data from the black boxes. He said Kiev was expecting an Iranian delegation to visit Ukraine next week for talks. Iranian foreign forces say they downed the Boeing 737 jet after mistaking it for a missile at a time of high tensions with the US. The crash claimed the lives of all 176 people on board, mostly Canadians. Turkey has slammed France for demanding European Union sanctions on Ankara over the Greek conflict. Foreign Ministry spokesman Hami Aksoy said Turkey cannot be threatened through sanctions. Aksoy said statements of France's President Emmanuel Macron have no value for the country. He said France has lost its neutrality and chance to contribute to the stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. Aksoy said Paris has not been able to get any results from its policies and will also fail in the future. The comments came after Macron demanded EU sanctions against Turkey, claiming violations of Greek and Cypriot waters. The UN Security Council has approved a request by the Libyan government of national accord to hold a session of the Sanctions Committee. Libya's envoy to the UN, Tahir al-Soni, said the session will be held at the end of July over violations of the arms embargo. The request comes as part of the GNA efforts to uncover countries that have provided support to militias. The Security Council imposed an open-ended embargo on Libya in 2011 to stop supplies of arms and military equipment to and from the country. Libya is involved in a bloody conflict between the forces led by Commander Khalifa Haftar and the UN-backed government headed by Faisal Sarraj. Israeli police have arrested 55 citizens for protesting near Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's residence in West Jerusalem. Thousands of demonstrators are venting their anger out against the Premier's mishandling of the coronavirus crisis and corruption. In a statement, the police said the arrests were made on the charges of causing public disturbance. It said that the police dispersed the protesters to restore the public order. Wearing protective masks, protesters chanted slogans and demanded Netanyahu's ouster. The demonstration started last month and police have arrested around 100 protesters over the past 2 weeks. Iraqi forces have freed a German activist, Hala Muez, who was kidnapped in Baghdad on Monday. In a statement, the Iraqi military announced the development without elaborating the details. Muez was abducted near her office on the Abu Nuwas street in the evening hours. No group has yet claimed the responsibility for the kidnapping. Muez is an activist and also the head of the culture department of the German Goethe Institute in Baghdad. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Russian President Vladimir Putin says the ongoing border clashes between Azerbaijan and Armenia are highly sensitive for Moscow. Over a dozen Armenian and Azeri soldiers have been killed in clashes between the two former Soviet republics. With a military base in Armenia, Russia has urged the two sides for a ceasefire. Earlier, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also urged Azerbaijan and Armenia to exercise maximum restraint. The two neighboring countries have long been in a conflict over the border region of Nagorno-Karabakh. International concern is heightened due to a threat to stability in a region serving as an energy corridor to global markets. The US says non-proliferation cooperation between Moscow and Washington will reinforce global security and stability. Talking to media, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said both nations face big strategic challenges concerning arms control. Pompeo said Washington and Moscow are set to begin strategic dialogue to discuss the next generation of arms control agreements. He said both the countries share the common interest of making the world a safer place. The secretary said China has declined Washington's invitation to participate in the negotiations. Pompeo said Washington remains hopeful that Beijing will reconsider. The US and the UK have accused Russia of testing a weapon-like projectile in space which can be used to target satellites in orbit. The US State Department described the recent use of what will appear to be actual in-orbit anti-satellite weaponry as concerning. UK Space Directorate has expressed concern over the tests and said the Russian satellite had the characteristics of a weapon. Russia's defense ministry said it was using new technology to perform checks on its space equipment. Russia, the UK, the US and China are party to a space treaty that requires that outer space is to be explored by all and purely for peaceful purposes. The treaty adds that weapons should not be placed in orbit or in space. The US has begun talks with Japan about deploying mobile American Marine units in Okinawa. In an interview, US Marine Corps Commandant General David Berger said armed units will work closely with Japanese forces. The commandant said the deployment will prevent any potential adversary from taking the next move. Earlier in March, Berger published a Force Designed 2030 plan to trim aircraft numbers, dump most cannon artillery and cut heavy armor. This comes as Washington have accused Beijing of using the coronavirus pandemic to further territorial claims in the South China Sea. Beijing insists its intentions in the region are peaceful and has accused Washington of trying to drive a wedge between countries in Asia. The US has approved a $634 million arms deal to upgrade Chile's F-16 Fighting Falcon combat jets. In a press release, the Defense Security Cooperation Agency said the State Department approved the proposed sale to Santiago. The agency said the move furthers US foreign policy and national security objectives in South America. It said Lockheed Martin will be the principal contractor and the proposed sale will not alter the regional military balance. Santiago had requested to buy modernization equipment and services, including software upgrades and combined altitude radar altimeters. US President Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman have reaffirmed the strong defense partnership between the two countries. In a statement, White House said Trump and Salman also discussed critical regional and bilateral issues during a phone call. The statement said the two leaders discussed the positive developments in defeating COVID-19 and re-energizing global economies. It said Trump also expressed his well wishes to Saudi Arabia's King Salman bin Abdulaziz, who underwent a successful surgery. US Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden and Barack Obama have slammed President Donald Trump's handling of the pandemic. In a video message, Biden said it cannot be imagined to say irresponsible words while holding the presidential office. The presidential candidate said he does not understand Trump's inability to get a sense of people's circumstances. Obama said it is hard to fathom anybody wanting to take away people's health care in the midst of a pandemic. Biden has started his campaign by using video messages to engage voters in order to excel in the digital presidential race. In the US, federal agents have fired tear gas at Black Lives Matter demonstrators in Portland in a 56th straight day of protests. Positioned behind a steel fence, federal agents began firing tear gas after a small group of protesters lit fires at a building entrance. The agents declared the protest unlawful and forced people to move back from the federal courthouse. Security forces have frequently tear-gassed and clubbed demonstrators during the unrest. Anger is simmering among the public over the deployment of federal officers to Portland. US President Donald Trump's administration has also hinted at sending a similar contingent to Seattle. The UN Human Rights Office said the US agents must not use disproportionate force against protesters and journalists. In South Sudan, thousands of families have fled their homes in troubled Jonglei region due to an outbreak of violence following months of peace. The United Nations mission in South Sudan says armed groups attacked the village of Likwangole. The UN said some 6,000 people have sought sanctuary next to a UN base in Pibo town. It said tensions remain high in Pibo with the prospect of many more families seeking protection. The mission called on parties to immediately stop fighting, pull back and return to their home areas. The UN said external actors need to stop deliberately stoking the conflict for the sake of local communities. Well, mediation efforts by the 5 West African presidents in Mali have ended without a deal over country's deepening political crisis. Presidents of Ghana, Ivory Coast, Niger, Nigeria and Senegal held talks all day to break the political deadlock in Mali. In recent weeks, tens of thousands of people have poured onto the streets of Bamako to demand President Ibrahim Keita's resignation. The protests turned violent earlier this month when clashes between security forces and the protesters left 11 people dead. Niger's President Mohammed said the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, will have a virtual meeting on Monday to discuss the crisis further.
In all these meetings, the objective is to find a compromise which will allow Mali to get out of this crisis quickly. I am optimistic. I hope that a solution will be found, but we have decided to report back to all the heads of states of the ECOWAS during an extraordinary summit that will be held 7th.
Italy's Senator Gianluigi Paragon has launched a political party that aims to take the country out of the European Union. Paragon presented his Italexit party after a meeting with Brexit party head Nigel Farage in London. The senator pointed to a survey which found about 7% of the Italians will likely vote for a party campaigning to leave the EU. The announcement comes just after Rome clinched a huge coronavirus recovery fund deal with the bloc. An $860 billion recovery package has been agreed by the EU leaders with a large slice earmarked for Italy. Britain says that about 30 million people in the country are to be offered the flu vaccine this year. In a statement, the government said this will prepare for a winter that can see the annual flu season coincide with a surge in coronavirus. The statement said the traditional flu program will include all people over the age of 50 for the first time and the people they live with. It said children in their first year of secondary school will also be offered the vaccine. Plans for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland have not yet been announced. Social distancing and hygiene measures are in place to stop coronavirus from having an impact on the amount of the flu going around. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex have sued paparazzi in the US for taking pictures of their son Archie at home. A royal couple has filed a formal complaint in Los Angeles, California, alleging an unnamed individual used drones to take pictures without permission. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have claimed the pictures were an invasion of privacy. The couple's lawyer argues all individuals in California have the right to privacy in their home, which can't be taken away. According to lawsuit, the Duke and Duchess are constantly followed by paparazzi who have tracked them down to their home in Los Angeles. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Lows and the highs of the business world now. Wall Street stocks have opened lower over rising US-China tensions and mounting coronavirus cases. Shares of the tech giants also dampened the market sentiment, with Amazon, Apple and Microsoft each slipped over 1%. All major bourses fell into the negative territory. Meanwhile, oil prices slipped in the backdrop of the tensions between the world's two biggest economies. BRICS countries have adopted a joint statement supporting multilateral trade system in their 10th trade ministers meeting. The countries agreed to strengthen cooperation in areas including e-commerce, intellectual property rights, as well as small and medium-sized enterprises. The ministers say they will oppose unilateralism and protectionism, while all along supporting necessary reform of the WTO. They have also agreed to protect the lawful rights and interests of the developing members. The ministers decided to step up collaboration amid the spread of the COVID-19, strengthening supply chains to jointly fight the pandemic.
China will work with all parties to implement the consensus and results of this meeting, further strengthen the coordination and cooperation of the BRICS countries in the economic and trade field, and contribute to the joint fight against the pandemic and the restoration of global trade and investment growth.
Starting the world of sports with cricket, West Indies have elected to field first against England in the third and the final test of the series at Old Trafford. At tea, the hosts were 131 for 4 after a shaky start, with Kamal Raj picking 2 wickets for West Indies. Earlier, Dom Sibley departed on a duck and skipper Joe Root was run out on 17, but a half-century by Rory Burns steadied the ship for England. Jofra Archer was included in the team after missing the second test due to breaching the COVID-19 protocols. England won the second test by 113 runs to level up the 3-match series. In football, English champions Liverpool beat Chelsea by 5-3 at Anfield to cap an entire league season undefeated at home. Injured Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson lifted the EPL trophy in a close ceremony after the match in front of an empty Kop. Reds raced into a 3-0 lead via goals from Naby Keita, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Georginio Wijnaldum before Oliver Giroud pulled one back. Roberto Firmino restored the 3-goal cushion that victors rode back through Tammy Abraham and Christian Pulisic. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain's strike 6 minutes from the time put the result beyond any doubt as the champions moved on to 96 points. Chelsea now need a point against Wolverhampton Wanderers in their fixture to qualify next season's Champions League. And in football, Juventus have missed out on the chance to wrap up the Serie A title as they fell to struggling Udinese by 2-1. Igia Nestoviski scored the equalizer for Udinese 7 minutes after the break before Siko Fofana scored the winner in the 92nd minute. Juventus only need 3 points to seal an unprecedented 9th consecutive Serie A title. They have only won one of their past 5 Serie A games, but the 3 teams below them, Atalanta, Inter Milan and Lazio, have all dropped points recently. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.